Hello, everybody. I'm Adam Gordon from Candidate.ID, if you don't know me. And we do these sessions once every couple of weeks where we bring somebody on to talk to us about something we think they're doing that's really cool. And we call this session Talent Pipe. And today we're talking about talent pipelines and how to give your CEO better night's sleep because you've got a brilliant talent pipeline. So I'm joined with one of the very few people that I know who's got a talent pipeline job title, and we absolutely predict that that's a craze that's going to erupt any minute, and everybody's going to have talent pipeline job titles. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm kind of jesting a little bit, but I genuinely do believe that, and I'm going to explain later on why I think that. So, Dave Vinton, thank you very much for joining me, and please just give us a bit of an explanation. So, what's your CV look like? And what are you doing today?
Sure. So my background's in talent acquisition in the energy sector. I've been doing that for about 15 years. I've been doing that in agency is where I started. Then I moved to working for oil and gas majors. Now I'm working for Orsted, we're the world's largest green energy company. And we're headquartered in Copenhagen. I'm here in London. We've got offices around the world. And I am Global Talent Pipeline Manager, which for engineering and EPC, which means I'm working with our executive leadership to make sure we've got the right talent in the right place at the right time. We're developing our talent internally. We're looking for the best talent externally. And then that our talent plan is tied up completely to our business plan. So we want to be in the place where we've got the best talent in the industry. We know where they are. We've got to plan to get it. And that's where we're working towards. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Okay, so part of that sounds quite HR-y and sounds quite strategic as well. So getting into some areas that are a little bit expanded from what you would typically find in a talent acquisition kind of role.
Yeah, they are. And I think my frustration with talent acquisition has been previously is talent acquisition is one part of the puzzle. So if we're looking at how do we solve talent challenges, it's more than talent acquisition. Getting great people in is part of it, but then also how do we identify really good people we've got in the organization? How develop those people? How do we match the skills gap in our organization by developing the skills we need with people we've already got? And how do we make sure that we're building a really robust leadership pipeline internally? So my background in talent acquisition means, I naturally think of bringing in external talent, but we also got loads of great people in our company who want to develop. So it's the whole picture, and I cover all of that. Talent acquisition is one really big part of it, but it's not all it is.
So tell us about the sort of size of the company, geographic spread. What are the types of people that you hire, and what's the kind of what does the future look like in terms of the types of people that you'll be bringing in? What kind of jobs are you going to be hiring less of, and what are you going to be hiring more of? Tell us about that. That's about 4 questions in one, but hopefully you remember.
No problem. So I will double check my notes to make sure that I am on brand, but we've got about 6,500 people at the moment. Mm-hmm. At the moment, our base of operations, we used to be an oil and gas company. We've transitioned almost entirely to renewables. Our base is Northern Europe. So we've got, we're headquartered in Denmark. So we've got a number of people in Denmark, about 1,000 here in the UK, which is hired our 1,000th person a couple of months ago. And then we've got offices in the Netherlands, in Germany. We're doing huge amounts of growth in the US. So we actually expect the US to be bigger than Northern Europe as a market in less than 5 years. So we're going huge there. We've just won 2 major bids. We're growing in Southeast Asia as well. So we've got a couple of big projects in Taiwan. We're doing some stuff in South Korea and Japan. So again, we see it as a major growth point. So we're at the stage where we're going global now. We want to treble the amount of renewable energy we've got installed by 2030. We're already the largest player in the space. We want to treble that in about 12 years. So we've got a lot of growth to do. And I'm trying to cover all 4 bases, Adam. So I'll try and get with you. That means we need to hire a lot of people. We're going to be hiring engineers who are going to help us design and build offshore wind farms, solar projects, onshore wind, bioenergy. And we want some really sort of skilled people because a lot of what we're doing is really cutting edge. And we're going to be hiring people who can operate those, help us, connect those to grid networks. And then also, like any other business, we're increasingly digital. We handle huge amounts of data. And so there are evolving skills in our business. So, for example, we're just experimenting at the moment with testing wind farms using drones rather than sending people up onto a wind turbine. So what does it look like in 5-10 years? Don't know for sure. It's going to be very technical. It's going to be very data heavy. And so that skills matrix is changing for us all the time. So we're trying to get ahead of that as well. That's part of our talent plan.
Your company is absolutely typical of how a business should have evolved. So oil and gas business, a lot of humans doing things, to becoming a renewable energy business, and progressively more things getting done by technology as opposed to humans. But as that happens, your company is continuing to look at new, better ways that further humans can create innovations. So an example being that you just said about testing wind farms with drones. So of course, less humans are going to be needed to do that, but I imagine that the continued growth in R&D means that the numbers of people that you're hiring are not going to go down at any point.
No, we don't think they're going to be. And the really cool thing is a lot of these R&D things are coming from people who are working on the wind farms, who are practically involved in it. They're coming up with the new ideas and innovations saying, hey, we could do this. So, there's a whole innovation games that's been going on recently where we're looking at challenges like, okay, we send boats out to the wind farms, but they're running on fossil fuels. How can we change that? And we've got some really cool ideas coming through. So the skills change. So part of what we're doing again with a talent strategy is we're looking to embed a continuous performance development culture, make sure there's learning opportunities for all. And we want our people to stay with us long term. So we want to help them evolve and progress their skills. The last thing we want to do is hire a load of people to replace people we're losing. That doesn't make any sense to us. So we're looking at that as part of the talent strategy as well.
Okay. So let's talk about the difference between the internal and the external. You're the same as me. From a talent acquisition kind of background, you think immediately of the external. But how do you go about sort of segmenting? Here's my internal pipeline, and here's my external. What are the main things in a job like yours that you need to think about?
I think the main thing we need to think about is what is our business strategy?
Yeah.
What are we looking to achieve? What numbers does that mean? What skills does that mean? And then how do we match that? So, we can go out and acquire talent in the market and just buy people in. That's one approach. We can also look at developing those skills internally. That's another approach. And so we're really looking at everybody, seeing how can we raise our game, being really clear about where we go. And maybe the mechanism is different, but the end's the same. It's about having the skills we need to meet the challenges that are coming down the line. And those are stacking up fairly thick and fast. So at the moment, one of the things we're working on is we've just won 2 huge wind farm projects in the US. How are we going to staff up for that? And some of that's going to be external hiring, probably quite a lot of it. But we're also looking about who's got the skills, where there's going to be a really good development opportunity for somebody, who can we deploy out there, how can we train people out there, how can we build an engaged pipeline of people internally for what we need in 2 and 3 years' time. So we're thinking about that as well. So it is about how do we manage that pipeline externally and internally to match where we need to be. So I imagine that your role is inseparable from the business plan. I imagine that you're involved at the point that bids are submitted and things like that. So it's not just we've won these 2 new wind farm contracts. Now, how do we actually staff that up? Are you inputting into the sort of people aspect of things when your company is going to pitch for new stuff in Taiwan or wherever? So where I get involved is we put together a forecast twice a year on if we win these bids, this is what we're going to need. So we've done this a lot of times now. We've built a lot of offshore wind farms, particularly. We know what that staffing is going to look like, maybe plus minus 5 people, but we know what skills we're going to need and roughly the numbers. So then we can build forecasts and plans off that. So we know that if we win this wind farm, we're going to need 100 people for it, and then X number of people at this stage. So we can really use that to build it. My frustration coming from an oil and gas background has been that these conversations take place over years.
Yeah.
And then they come to a talent acquisition team and say, hey, we need a situation I had in a previous company. We need 400 people in Angola and we need them in 3 months. And I go, yes, but you've been bidding this project for 3 years. At what point did you know that you were going to need to staff up in Angola? Oh, 3 years ago. But there wasn't a connection that maybe telling the talent team, the talent acquisition team would have been a helpful thing to do then. So we're trying to connect the dots. This is workforce planning. All workforce planning is getting your business plan and saying, what does that mean for the numbers we need and the skills we need? And then we're going to help you put together a proactive talent acquisition strategy or a talent development strategy. We're going to work with you to make sure when we need those people, we're good to go. Yeah.
And okay, so do you, you are a self-contained unit of one, or do you manage a team? Have you actually got people in your area working with you?
I am a self-contained unit of one. We've got 8 talent pipelines. I manage 2 of them.
Yeah.
And so I've got 3 colleagues who are doing the same job as me, just with other professional areas of business. I think because our role is really quite free-ranging, we're talking about internal talent development. We're talking about talent acquisition. We're talking about learning and development. We're talking about employer branding. We're talking about how do we engage in performance management? How do we shift the skills to where we need? We're involved in pretty much every single area of HR, but that doesn't mean the whole of HR reports to me. I'm more there to, I think, provide that future focus, talk about where we're going, and make sure that HR is connected to the business strategy. What happens in a lot of large organizations is the two seem to be separate. There's an HR strategy. It's not necessarily fully aligned to the business strategy. That's what we're trying to address.
And what are the 2 pipelines that you specifically look after?
So engineering, which is hopefully fairly self-explanatory. So that's physically how do we build it. And an EPC, that's engineering, procurement and construction. That's literally from we need to build it to the point where we switch on and we hand it over to people who are going to operate it for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
So we go all the way to the point where we start delivering power to the grid. And that's the point where I jump off and our operations guys take over.
So you're kind of like, I mean, what you just said, that you're involved in all areas of HR and all of this. You're like a kind of air traffic control unit.
Yes.
Yeah. And in terms of the way that you've presumably got 2 main stakeholders, which are the 2 executive directors responsible for those 2 specific areas, or is it more of a matrix kind of? How does it work?
More of a matrix for me, actually. Currently, our head of engineering and head of EPC is the same person, so he's on our executive board.
Yeah.
But then we have quarterly talent pipeline forums, and in those we have 8 to 10 senior directors and vice presidents, and we all align around the talent strategy. We all talk about what we're going to need. We all talk about how our internal skills are developing, talk about how individuals are progressing with their careers and how we're building that internal pipeline. And we do that every quarter. So I've got the next one coming up in September and we're preparing for that now.
So your area of focus is right from sort of exec level right down to the kind of apprentices and the sort of early career talent for the different areas that you pipeline for?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I can't be intimately engaged in every single area because we're talking about 1,800 people.
Yeah.
What I do want to do is have a good pulse on what's happening. We've got a fantastic team of HR business partners who know these parts of the business far better than I do, and we rely on their experience. What I'm hoping to do is provide that point of connection into the business strategy and into the overall talent strategy, and make sure that every area, what we're doing is aligned to what we're trying to do overall.
How do you decide which areas are, which jobs are pipelineable and which are not?
I think we don't want to sort of try and pull it down to jobs if we can. We're trying to focus on people. Yeah. So we will look at areas of our business that are, where we forecast the growth, and that can get a lot of attention. But then there's other areas of our business that are pretty much sort of, at a stable core. Or, we're actively pulling out of. So we cross-trained a load of people out of oil and gas into renewables when we made the switch over from fossil fuels to green energy.
Yeah.
And another challenge for us is coming is we've been converting power stations in Denmark to bioenergy, which is great, fantastic for the environment, really skilled team of people. But in 2 or 3 years' time, we're going to be done. We're going to have converted all the power stations we own to bioenergy. And so we're already thinking about how do we start providing the opportunity for those people to move into other parts of the business. And so we're trying to get ahead of that curve. And we're setting up mentors in the business. We're cross-training them. We're providing opportunities for deep dives in certain areas. So we don't want to be in a position where we're losing people. We want those people to stay with the business. So if there's an area where we say, look, this is going to be less of a focus, let's provide those opportunities for keeping those great people with our business. And let's think about that ahead of time rather than being a reactive move.
Yeah. Okay. So you work in an industry that has traditionally had a lot of reliance on contractors and temporary workforce, contingent workforce. Is that something that falls into your area? Is that something your company prioritizes, or is it all about the permanent employees?
We would like to be doing more and more of the permanent employees. The nature of our market is we have a lot of contractors in certain parts, but you see a lot of that from subcontractor sides. So we're the owner and the operator. The people who do parts of the work for us maybe have a higher reliance on contractors than we do. Contractors are part of our business. We've got a number of contractors with the business. We want to build strong relationships with them. That is more of sort of a gig economy type model in a way, in that if you're a contractor for us, you may move on to another project, but in 3 years' time, you may well be back with us on another project or want to come back as a permanent member of staff. So how we engage with and treat those contracts is really important as well.
Yeah.
We're also looking at seeing how do we build a flexible permanent workforce to match our future demand. But both parts are important. We want to make sure that there's a really good experience for contracts as well as permanent staff, because the nature of industry is we see the same people again and again, which is great, because they can take the experience they've got from us and from other places and use it again to come up with fresh ideas and new approaches.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you interact with the team that actually fills vacancies?
Yeah, great question. One thing I'm doing is trying to help them get ahead of the curve. So one frustration for anyone in talent acquisition is the job can feel very reactive and transactional. Because a hiring manager will come and dump 200 vacancies on your desk and say, I need these people today. And that we could have seen around that corner earlier. And so actually me being able to sort of say, what have we got coming down the pipe? What could happen? Where do we need to build a pipeline of people? Where do we need to build talent pools is really important for us. And then we can also constructively engage with business at that point and plan and go, we're looking at doing these big projects, but where's the labor force? Where's the skill sets? Can we provide that level of insight to you so we can make plans around the people we could be bringing in? And so I'm here to hopefully make their life easier, to provide them with some real sort of sparring around where are we going, how we're going to get there. Yeah. And then the nature of my background is I'm quite involved in other areas of TA. So we're looking at how do we make TA more of a sourcing-led function, where we are ahead of a curve, not just slightly behind it, which is often where TA ends up.
Yeah. Okay. So you're almost like, I described you as air traffic control earlier. You're almost also like a kind of two-way account manager. You're an account manager to the EPC, the engineering and EPC business on behalf of TA, but you're also an account manager for them to the other way around as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would almost see me as being somebody who is the link between HR and the business. Yeah. You've got HR business partners who do that, who do a great job. My job is talent. So trying to link the business strategy and talent strategy, and then making sure that what we're doing across HR is intimately tied to what we need to do for talent. And that is the business plan. And then we're checking back what we're doing with the business at regular points and saying, we're thinking of doing this. Yeah, what do you think? How do we do this? There's a big conversation going on at the moment around global mobility. And I'm working very closely with both the business and my colleagues in HR to say, what do we need to do? How to address it? How do we tackle that? And that's a really important role to have. And actually, I think that's a role that the business are looking for us to have. Leads me into where we kick this off with helping a CEO sleep at night. Mm-hmm. And people saying this is the biggest single challenge for CEOs is talent. HR for years and talent acquisition have been saying we want to have a seat at the table. Here's a burning issue. The business really wants solutions to these problems. The seat at the table is there for the taking. If we can come up with smart answers about how we're going to meet the business challenges with a talent strategy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I wanted to, there's a few things I wanted to touch on. One is about the sourcing led, you want the approach to be more sourcing led. Could you explain what you think the benefits of that are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work in a high technology environment. We also work in a very heavily competitive environment. We've got every major energy company who wants a piece of the pie in the market that we're in. So there is a real, people call it a wars of talent, battle for talent. There's a lot of opportunities for really good people. So we want to make sure that we're doing a really good job to identify those people, to build a relationship with those people, whether they join our company or not, ahead of them joining. That's really important for us. So they know who we are, they know what we're doing, they have an understanding of our company. And then also what we want to do is we want to make sure that when we have these needs emerging, that we're ready to go. It's not the case that we suddenly go, oh, help, and you're building a sourcing strategy from scratch at the point of need. Because then you always end up delivering the people for the business. Talent acquisition teams find great people. But if we get it at the point of need, it's 3 or 6 months after we are dealing with those people in the organization. We're trying to cut that lead time down by making sure that we're sourcing those people, building those relationships ahead of time.
Okay, so back to the CEO point. So the CEO's challenge is, in most industries, the CEO's biggest problem is, do I have the right people in my organization to mean I've got competitive advantage and, all those kinds of things. But in most organizations, the CEO might think about that, but not really do an awful lot with it because there's other lower hanging fruit that they can go and execute. What are the metrics? What are the things that gets your CEO or your CFO or any other C person? What are the kinds of things that the approach that you're taking at Orsted, what are the things that they're expecting from you? And what are the things that you're giving them to give them comfort?
We've got a huge advantage that our CEO is the one who's driving the talent agenda. So he's pushing harder than probably anyone else in the business. He's really clear about this. He's mentioned it at every single board meeting. He's pushing this really hard. And you do want that supportive business environment. It's really tough to lead major business change out of HR. It's going to hit the brakes at some point. Yeah. What we're looking at is internal skills development and mobility. So are we actually moving the bar on people developing the skills they need to keep up with the changing market, to stay ahead of it?
Yeah.
Are we providing extra career mobility, and can we measure that? So measurably, we're creating more opportunities for people. We're not only tracking vertically, but how many people are moving across into completely new functions and sharing their ideas with new things? We're tracking that too. We're looking at our diversity and inclusion, which is really important for us, of course. We want to build a really diverse international workforce. And then we're looking at how are people engaging with our learning culture. And then our engagement survey is key for us as well. The final one we look at is our exit survey. So we're fortunate to have really low turnover. But actually, the primary reason people have left us in the past is for their feeling that they didn't get the career opportunity they wanted in the organization. And we want to see that coming down. We want to see people will leave our organization. That happens to any business. But we want people also to feel that they can have their career, they can fulfill their aspirations with us. And so we're tracking these metrics as well. There's a raft of other. We've got a KPI dashboard covering a number of different factors, but those are some of the key ones for us.
So, but from the CEO's perspective, is this about having the flexibility to execute certain things as an organization? Is it about reducing cost? Is it about creating higher performance? And what do you think that person's kind of real objective is for prioritizing this?
The real objective is business value. Let's be clear about where we are. We work in an industry where we have a lot of competitors, and an offshore wind block will go out for bids. There'll be 5 or 6 people bid for it. There will be people who've got exactly the same supply chains we have, exactly the same technology we have. The only differentiation is the people we have, our talent. And so the only way we create business value is being able to do things more efficiently, more effectively, in a better way than our competitors. And that's all about the people. And so we're looking to create business value. We're looking to treble our installed capacity. And our CEO has said, look, talent is how we deliver this. It's how we deliver business growth. It's how we deliver shareholder return. These are not two separate things. Business growth and shareholder return for us is a talent metric. And actually, we should see the company continue to match its growth goals if we get the talent strategy right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I want to move on to the thing that I'm most interested in, which is really the external talent pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about building talent pools, for example. So listen, what's the what do you think are the most important things that a company like yours can do to keep people kind of interested and enthused when they're not working with you?
I think it depends where we are. We're fortunate that in Denmark, where we're a major utility, we've got the same sort of brand recognition as a British Gas or a Centrica. We're that well known. We're in the top sort of 5-10 people to work for. Yeah. Outside of Denmark, how many people have heard of Orsted? Not very many. And so actually building people's knowledge of us is a big part of that. And I think actually talking to them about what tangible difference could they make if they came and join us, what does that look like? The story I've consistently heard at the company since I've been here is this is a fantastic company. It's the best company you've never heard of. Now, I would like to change that to being it's the best company you've ever heard of. That would be where I like to move the needle. And then people understand really clearly going, this is what the culture's like. This is what the people are like. This is what the opportunities are. And I can visualize myself there. Now, it may not be right for me. It may not be that I want to join. But engineers know engineers. Operations people know operations people. And actually, the more we can do to build the messaging, and the more we can build people who are really interested in us and say, look, I am interested if you win another wind farm in the US. That's the sort of place I could see myself. And building a relationship ahead of time is hugely important, rather than just dropping an email into someone's inbox and going, hey, we're Orsted. Have you ever heard of us? We need engineers. Yeah. That's where we want to make that change.
Yeah. Okay. And so from your experience, what are the sorts of things that engineers are going to respond to? Why would they want to keep in contact with your business? Why would they be happy to open an email from somebody at your company? Because certainly from my experience, you send them a job description, 80% of people are not in the market. In your industry, it's going to be higher than that. It's going to be like 90% of people are not today in the market. So what are the sorts of things that you think that are inspiring to them to make them want to click?
I think firstly, I'd say that what one person wants is not always the same as what another person wants. So it is about trying to engage people individually. And we do some really cool things around CSR. We do some really fantastic things around pushing health and fitness in the workplace, and lots of stuff we do in the community that is going to be really interesting for people. So it will vary depending on who we're speaking to. For engineers, I think technical engineering isn't different to software engineering. We've got people who enjoy big challenges, want to do cool things, want to do things that are cutting edge. And that's a really interesting thing for people, saying, how can I really meet a big challenge. So we're building a wind farm at the moment for the coast of the UK. That will be, when it's in operation, the biggest wind farm in the world. That's cool. When we built that one, the next one coming
Sorry, where is it specifically, Dave?
It's off the east coast of England. It's about 20 miles offshore, and we're building another one next to it, which will then take the title as the world's biggest after that. Wow. The one we've just been awarded for New York State in their wind auction is 30 miles offshore. These are some really big engineering challenges. We're at the cutting edge of what is possible and feasible. That's exciting for engineers. It really is interesting. So if we can talk to them about technical challenges and what you can do, but the people we can work with and how you can build a career, that's really interesting. But then we do also want to share some of the culture with them. So we want to share what we're like as a company. We're very open, we're very transparent, we value families, we value people, we value people as individuals. We want to share some of that as well. We're not just talking about we're going to work you hard, but we really care for you as an individual. So we want to start sharing lots of those types of stories. And then people can really identify whether this is the right fit for them, if it's what they want to do. And that's what we like to build long term.
Absolutely. So what do you think are the biggest challenges for a company like yours when it comes to creating your talent pipelines?
I think the challenges are sometimes knowing where to start. I think also for talent acquisition, it's also trying to think differently about talent.
Yeah.
I think talent has often been very much a transactional function, talent acquisition.
Yeah, sure.
And we measure ourselves on transactional KPIs. We measure ourselves on time to hire and cost per hire, which are process efficiency metrics, but they've got nothing to do with hiring great people. And so we need to start thinking about how to engage with talent longer term. And that's often a mindset shift. We also need to start thinking about where are we going longer term. We've still got to deliver what's on the table. So if we've got 200 roles open, we need to fill the 200 roles that are open, of course. But then we also need to lift above a parapet slightly and go, where are we going longer term? How are we building that? And then we can really start having some cool conversations around how do we build for the future? How do we think strategically about where we go and get people from? And we work in a global industry. That means we can start thinking a bit more creatively and going, actually, where are the skills that we're going to need in a few years' time? They may not even be located in the country we're operating in. Yeah. We could go somewhere else and we could build our network and relationships there for careers in a completely different country and a different environment. So we're trying to think strategically, we're trying to think long term. And I think that's actually where the business really sees the value, where we start having the strategic conversations they're having. Our execs are thinking about where the business is going to be in 3 to 5 years' time. If we can start adding some real talent thinking to that, we're really helping to solve some of that headache.
So you're operating in a kind of business intelligence sort of area as well, talent intelligence kind of around where are skills in the world, and presumably that is impacting on where new sites get located and things like that.
Yeah, and that's something that's huge for us. So let's say hypothetically we want to build an engineering hub somewhere. Actually providing the intelligence about where the skills are is going to be a really important input into that process, saying, actually, these are where the skills are. Here's where people are located. Here's where the skill pools are. And then if we're looking at things like employer branding and communications, now, who do I want to market to? I want to market where the skills are. And that may not even be the same city or the same country where my project is. So there's lots of things that we can start feeding in here, but it's data driven. But again, if we can start coming to the table with these kinds of insights, this is really elevating the role of talent acquisition and human resources across the whole business.
Let's talk about technology. So how has technology impacted on the kind of job you're doing today? And, if you were doing the job you're doing today 5 years ago, I mean, could you have done it? Would you have had the insights that you can generate today? So talk to me about that.
It was possible to get some of the insights 5 years ago, but it was a huge amount of work. So I was running a project 5 years ago for another oil and gas major where we were hiring for projects in Angola, Congo, and Ghana. And we essentially crunched through LinkedIn Recruiter to try and figure out where the skill sets were in the world and where we could go and hire. And we went and did hiring events in Brazil, Malaysia, and Singapore to get those skills, and hugely successful. It took me a month to crunch the data. So there was quite a delay in it. And actually, in terms of the insights, in terms of where people are, it was really, really tough. Building an engaged talent pipeline was even more nebulous. So I think for a lot of people, it was saying, okay, we've got this many people in a LinkedIn project and we've got this many people on our ATS. That's our talent pipeline, without any real engagement way of tracking that, way of scoring that. Technology is huge. I think, technology needs to be used in a smart way, but now we're able to do so many more things around data, around tracking what people are doing, around tracking engagement. We can actually go, what's connecting, what's landing, and then be really smart about our strategy. And that is far, far easier than it was 5 years ago. Things around tracking talent pipelines who we're engaging with was almost impossible 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's talk about, you've got a lot of experience in TA. So let's just talk more generally, outside of your role. What are the most interesting things going on in talent acquisition generally that you're keeping an eye on?
I think this is one of the interesting things is going, actually, how do we make sure that we deliver the value for talent acquisition? And how do we communicate that? Let's be really clear about the value we're bringing to the organization. There's a big push around D&I. I think it's really exciting. I've worked in some hugely international environments before. And you see the strength that brings to organizations. I think we've got a long way still to go, but I think it's a really interesting thing to do. Now, I think actually trying to say how to do things really well at scale are huge as well. We've fallen into this, maybe not by necessity, largely by budgets, into TA being quite a transactional function. We might get 100 applicants to a role. We deliver possibly a great experience for the one person we hire, but for the 99 we don't hire. What's happened to those? So that's a big thing for me as well, is actually, if we're trying to build relationships with people and we're looking at engaging talent, we're going to have a load of people who are going to apply for us, who are going to be great hires for us in the future. Or people might want to connect with 3-5 years down the line. But if we deliver a crap experience, we're not going to get that traction anymore. I've recently been through a job hunt myself. The number of times I've fired in a CV, heard nothing, got a rejection note 3, 4, 5, 6 months later. That's auto-generated by the ATS. And these are applying for head of talent acquisition jobs where I would have thought I'm suitable. Now, my perception about companies dropped as a result. So actually, how to engage with people long term and how to offer everyone a great experience. These are some things I'm really interested in from TA, because I think that's huge in terms of building our brand and engaging with talent longer term. Yeah.
So, I don't want to be rude about people, but a lot of people in TA have fallen into, or talent acquisition has become very I don't know, was it ever anything different? I don't know. It's transactional and it shouldn't necessarily be transactional. So there's a lot of people in TA who have got a transactional mindset, and really they are executors. They couldn't do the job that you're doing. For somebody that's doing the job that you're doing, what do you, or if I'm sitting here as a recruiter in a company, an oil and gas business, and I want to be global talent pipeline manager, Orsted, what do I need to do to get from there into doing the exciting job that you're doing?
So I think actually for a lot of recruiters, they're as frustrated by some of the things I mentioned as I was. They care about people, they care about a great experience, but they're also in a position where they say, look, we need you to deliver 100, 150 hires a year with limited budget, with limited technology, limited skills. And it becomes a process. It becomes an optimized process because that's the only way you can get through. So I do feel and sympathize with that. I think what I want to be doing is I want to be saying to the business and the people I'm working with, look, we can do so much more for you. If I mention the word workforce planning, everyone has a sort of sharp intake of breath and starts to panic. But if I go to a business leader and say, look, talk to me about what's coming down the pipe in 6 or 12 months' time, I could really improve the way that you engage with talent. Talk to me about what the big projects are. Talk to me about where the areas of growth are. Talk to me about where the skills are we think we're going to have to go and acquire externally. Because these are things that are being thought about. And they're saying, look, we can come up with some ways of addressing that for you. We can really think about how we strategically tackle that. And we can start thinking about those sorts of things. I know we're looking at, let's take technology, we're looking at setting up a data center in the next sort of 12 months in a different country. What if I could bring you the insights about where the right skills are going to be? We're looking at a shared services hub. I can help you think about where we relocate that based on where the skills are, based on what will work for us, and bring in salary data and all kinds of interesting ideas. I think having those level of conversation with the business, we're solving a problem and we're starting to fill in some of the gaps in their knowledge. And then we're also demonstrating the value that TA can bring. And I think TA is in a difficult place. We're often the people where very, very easy to criticize, very easy to shout at TA, they're not providing enough CVs to me in a fast enough format of a high enough quality. And we need to say we can do that, but we want to get ahead of the curve. We need to be in a position where we're aligned on what we're thinking. We're providing you with insight and intelligence, and this is a partnership. So that's what I'd want to do, is I want to start having those business conversations about what's going to be happening and explaining the benefit to them of if we can get ahead of that.
So if you could fix one thing, again, outside of your role in talent acquisition generally, if you could fix one thing, or there was one thing that can be a lot better, what would it be?
If I could fix one thing, I would stop managing talent acquisition teams on time to hire and cost per hire. It would be the first thing I would do. I'd drop it completely. I think if we're able to go to executive leadership and say, rather than, okay, our time to hire last year was 30 days and this year it's 29 days, we brought cost to hire down by £200 per employee. Yeah. And instead change that to, we've proactively built engaged talent pipelines of people around the needs we have in the next 12 months based on our strategic priorities in the business plan. And we are ready and able and capable when we make these decisions to initiate the staffing around that in a quick, efficient way. We'll get great people. Nobody's going to care so much about time and cost per hire. That's one of the things I'll do, is try and lift this out of transactional, lift the strategic. But businesses want us to do that. They just haven't got the vision of how we do it.
Yeah, no, I agree, because they're not the experts, and people in talent acquisition are the experts around how they can be adding more value. And it takes somebody that's both brave and influential in an organization to be able to really get it onto the boardroom table, to get time in the exec team's diary to go, this has to change and this is why.
Yeah, and I admit I'm in the fortunate situation where my business has seen the value in that, has brought in people to do exactly this, which is why I'm one of a few people who's global talent pipeline manager. This is going to change. It is going to change, and actually really learning our business as well, knowing what they're doing, knowing what they're thinking, having those conversations. Even if we're able to say to an executive, look, let's grab 30 minutes for a coffee and just understand where you're going the next sort of 3-6 months. Yeah, I see we've updated our business plan. We've just done a quarterly review. We've just done our town hall. Can we catch up and talk about what that's going to mean for hiring in the next sort of 12 months? We've got these projects we've said we're bidding for. What's that going to do for things? Yeah, we've said we're going to grow here. What does that mean? And actually, that doesn't need to be necessarily executive. We could go to the manager level and start talking about how that's going to move and shape things over time. Again, I've been in the fortunate scenario. I've kind of worked my way up the food chain slightly in terms of who I speak to over time. Yeah. But I didn't start by speaking to executive directors and CEOs in my career. I worked my way up, and actually having those conversations and trying to learn what they're doing and how we connect talent to it is, I think, huge. Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. And I really think that people in talent acquisition are entrepreneurial, and I think they have the opportunity to do a lot more in terms of forging their careers and their influence within an organization. And you're showing that can be done, which is terrific. So I want to ask you just 2 quick questions. Do you know Toby Culshaw?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Good guy to talk to about the whole talent intelligence and that kind of stuff, because he's another interesting example of somebody who's been a recruiter and he's moved into something that's a lot more strategic. And he's not involved in anything to do with hiring today, but it's all about where to situate new parts of the business and things like that.
And again, that's part of the evolution of TA. Is I think we will see TA move from being a tactical part of the business to a strategic part. Yeah. The stuff Toby's doing is really cool. So I speak to Toby every time I meet up an RL100 event.
Yeah.
And they're doing some really cool stuff. But this is where TA needs to go, from being tactical, transactional, to being a strategic deliverer of differentiated value to the business. So that's really cool what those guys are doing at Philips.
Okay, the other one, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this as well then. You know Debbie Robinson?
Yes.
Again, doing really cool things and not hugely dissimilar to what you're doing at PepsiCo. A lot of her kind of responsibilities from what she's told me about are, pretty similar. It's about, with a specific emphasis on critical hires, diversity, inclusion. There's 4 or 5 kind of key pillars that are like the main sort of things. So, okay. Final question I've got is, you just mentioned RL100, and I was going to ask you about it. Tell us a bit about, for those that don't know about RL100, what is it? And, has it been valuable to you? And tell us a little bit about it.
RL100 is hugely valuable for me. So it's recruitment events company, the guys who organize RecFest, which probably lots of people went to because it's massive and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
RL100 is an invite-only group for heads of resourcing and people similar. There's people like me and Toby who are doing something slightly weird and different in there as well.
Yeah.
But generally we're at the same level and trying to think about the same challenges. I think the most useful thing for me is getting different ideas, fresh perspectives on the same things we're thinking. Lots of great speakers. Yeah. So we meet up every couple of months for lunch and then a panel discussion and an interview. And then we have summits that are 2 days long, a couple of times a year. Mm-hmm. But what's really important and something that I think every recruiter can take away is find people who are trying to tackle the same issues you are in different companies. They're going to give you a fresh perspective, a new idea on how you can do things.
Yeah.
You can go to a recruitment conference and hear what IBM are doing and go, well, that's really cool, but I've got 200 people in my organization. I don't see how it scales. Yeah. But if you network with people who are doing your job in other things, in other companies like yours, have a different take on things, you can talk to people who are thinking about things in a different way. It's going to give you lots of ideas you can take back to your firm. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. So I would say if you're not a RL100 member, get familiar with what they're doing by just following the hashtag on Twitter and LinkedIn and looking at the reports that they're generating and get yourself known to the people, because I think that that's a lot of people. It's been going for 3 years, I think now, and that's a lot of people who have accelerated their careers by getting involved. So I would wholeheartedly recommend to anybody listening to this to get involved. If you're in the UK, there is an equivalent in Australia, also RL100, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is in other countries in the next couple of years as well.
And we're looking for new members. So I probably wouldn't be doing my job as an RL100 member and said we're looking for new members for next year. We have a mentoring program as well. We have a whole future leaders category as well. So you don't have to be global head of resourcing to be connected to the RL100, speaking with us and learning, picking up some of the ideas. And it's really cool to hear what some big companies and some different employees are doing and how they're thinking about that space. But then how do they get to what they're doing today? So that's really cool opportunity for people.
Yeah. Great. So very last thing, you were at RecFest, I guess?
Yep.
Yeah, good event?
Great event.
I'm one of the few people that didn't get there. I was on holiday, but just give us a quick summary of the day.
So yeah, RecFest is kind of Glastonbury meets recruitment conference, which is just fantastic. So I think 6 stages this year with a full program of content on each one, covering everything from diversity and inclusion, how to do talent acquisition at scale, how to connect with people, cool new tech tools. There's lots going on. There's more than you can see in a day, because I certainly struggled to get around most of it. But then also a really good opportunity to connect with people who are doing the same job as you, 3,000 recruiters there. And that's an incredible networking opportunity to speak to people, to learn from people. And actually, you know, if you're TA and you're 1 or 2 or 3 in a company, great day out to understand what you're doing really matters. Meet with people who are meeting the same challenges, and just have a lot of fun and enjoy the great stuff that we do as a part of an organization.
Yeah, cool. Okay, Dave, thank you very much for coming and joining me. I've been really fascinated by you basically telling us your job description and objectives, as well as a couple of other varied aspects of talent acquisition and how you see it all working. I've learned a lot, and it's been fun. It's been really useful, and a lot of people are going to enjoy. The people who have come and joined, they're going to have enjoyed it, as are the people that are going to look at the replay. So, again, Dave, thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you in the future.
Great, thanks, Adam.
Cheers. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.